Welcome to the Cunning Plan podcast. I'm here today with Lizzie.
Hello.
And Joe.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about engaging with influencers. These are the people that influence the decisions that we make, help us sell our brands and ultimately increase our reach and get more and more people to see the things that we're hoping to try and help our clients sell and promote. So what we thought we'd do today is really sort of try and dive into a little bit more detail about how we can go about getting in touch with these people, how you can find the right people, and ultimately how you can get them to do what you want them to do, and ideally not always have to pay them. Sometimes you always will have to pay them, but there are plenty of ways to get in front of these people without having to necessarily part with our hard-earned cash. So, Lizzie, what's the first thing you need to do to try and figure out where to start when it comes to influencer marketing?
So the first point we have is you need to make sure you're engaging with the correct audience. So review your own target audience. What are their interests? Who are they looking at? What bloggers would they want to see promoting your product? And that's obviously who you want to be targeting. So your influencers and your target audience need to match up. You need to look at the followers, following to like ratio, because a lot of bloggers nowadays buy followers. So if someone has 50,000 followers, they might only have 5,000 followers because they're all just fake accounts basically. So they're not going to do anything for your brand. You need to get as much information about them as possible. How many posts are they doing? What are their most popular posts? What works well? What media do they use? Are they best on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter? And does that match up with the product you're trying to sell? So yeah, engaging with the correct bloggers.
So when you're looking for these people, you're trying to find the right bloggers to work with, or the right people on social to engage with. How do you kind of start with that process? So presumably you're just doing a Google search to say, talk about the subjects that you're kind of interested in, the products you're talking about, seeing which sort of blogs come up organically first. How would you use, say, if you're using Twitter or Instagram or something like that to try and find some of those people? Where would you kind of start with that?
I think a lot of it is about very in-depth research. You can't just Google top 10 bloggers and come up with some bloggers that are perfect for your brand. You have got do a lot of searching on Instagram. Maybe start with the top 10 bloggers and then look at the related bloggers to these guys, sort of get into the depths of the blogging community and then just really delve into each platforms that they've got, and you'll be able to see who's good for your brand. Research hashtags that are relative to your brand that they might also be hashtagging. Even approaching new customers and asking them what bloggers they're into, if they're into bloggers, or what social media platforms that they use the most, to see where you want to target the bloggers.
Yeah, I think also, the keyword searching, especially on Twitter and Instagram as well, can bring up certain profiles of people who look in specific areas of your brand or product that you're trying to promote. That's always quite a useful tool to use. But definitely, I think, dig as deep as you can, as much as your time affords, because I think even if someone's got quite a small following, they've got an engaged user base. They could only have 2,000 followers. It doesn't sound like a lot compared to someone who's got 25, but if they're regularly getting a lot of retweets and engagements or comments or whatever, that's far more influential for whether you're going to choose them or not. Because someone, as Lizzie was saying, you can easily buy 10,000 followers for about 50 quid. It's completely pointless. It just looks impressive, and they're the people that you see at the very beginning of your list. But if you've got the time and you can dig down into it, you can find genuine people who are writing about it properly and their audience is immediately engaged. That'd be far more effective, and logically with 2,000 followers, cheaper as well.
And look at your competitors as well. There's nothing wrong with looking at who your competitors are using and approaching them or approaching people that are similar to them. I think that would be helpful. Or looking at them to see what kind of person you need to be approaching.
Yeah, and I guess that the more deeply you research it, the more likely you are to hit upon some sort of maybe some hidden gems or some people that are going to those you say the Google top 10 bloggers to get the most the biggest people on Twitter. You are likely to pay quite a bit of money to get those people to talk about your product. But down below them, there's probably some.
You need to delve into the depths.
Right, so we found an amazing list of underrated bloggers that have amazingly engaged audiences or great profiles on social. What do I do now? I've got this great product. I've got a load of people that want to talk about it. Where do I start?
Approaching them, I guess. You want to be as authentic as possible when you're approaching them. A lot of the time, bloggers will have their contact email address on their social media. But you can send them a direct message on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. But usually I'd say that email is the best way to go. Some bloggers do use management, so it's a bit trickier through the management. But just be friendly and approachable. Don't have a formatted email that sounds very structured. You want to sound professional, but you want to sound friendly and approachable, and you want them to be excited about working with you.
Presumably they've got a management sort of email address. It's a pretty big red flag that they're going to be charging you some sort of fairly decent amount of money to take away your product.
And if be like transparent as well. If you can't afford or you're not prepared to pay for bloggers at this point in the game, just don't be afraid to say that in your email. Tell them we want to send you this product. We don't have a budget for it at the moment, but we'd love to send it to you and see what you think about it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, and or they'll send you back their rates if you are prepared to pay.
Okay. What about anything that you can do, Joe, on social in advance of that approach to try and kind of butter them up a little bit, or?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. I think you can butter them up. I think you found your bloggers that are naturally going to be the kind of people who are going to be talking about your product or products in and around that area. So you can, the obvious thing to do is tag them in your posts, encourage them to look at what you're doing, encourage them to look at, your tone of voice and how you're presenting yourself, because logically that blog is also going to marry up in quite a few sections that you do. And I think certainly Twitter and Instagram, putting that @ handle in there so they immediately pops up on their feed, and they might then leave it for a couple of weeks, just keep handling them, and they will start to recognize your stuff, and then you can drop in, even the direct message will work. But as Lizzie was saying, you just need to make it a bit more personal, the message, because we all get those emails where it's, "Hi, have you seen this?" or "Hi, I really like your work." Immediately they'll get used to it.
You don't even read the first sentence and then dismiss it. Really.
It'll go in the junk box, and that's it. So I'd definitely say handling them just to get them aware of the product. They don't expect a response. Probably they'll probably just ignore it, but if you leave for a couple of weeks, they'll be familiar with it. That your message probably won't come as a bolt out of the blue, which is normally not a great method, because they'll know that you're just after something.
Yeah.
And start with a compliment. If you're approaching them, start with a compliment like, "Hey, we love your work," or "We love your content. We think we'd be great working together," or something like that.
I guess, and be quite specific in that respect as well, because as you said, I get those emails all the time. Like, I really read with interest your article about SEO on your website. Would you mind putting a link to this article on there? And it's like, you never read my article on there. Like, that's just nonsense. No. But if you say that, I know I really liked your post about this product or this thing that you did, or your photographs of such and such, then they know it's legit and it's a real person sending them a message. And they get it as well, don't they? Like, I think they know that they're getting getting stuff for free. They're talking about that stuff. This is they know there's a symbiotic relationship between what we do and trying to get people to talk about stuff, and what they do, which is talking about stuff. And if we don't all work together on it, then they'll have nothing to talk about, and won't make any money as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let them know that they're talking to a person and not just a company. But also, like, you can be friendly and approachable, but also include what's expected of them if you want to work together, what your strategies are going to be. Set out a structure in that initial email so that they've got all the information that they need to review whether they want to work with you or whether they don't.
Okay.
And that will filter out all the unnecessary second, third, fourth emails.
Yeah. So what sort of things are we looking for in that blogger or that influencer that we're going to work with? What should be the things we're asking for, the deliverables, I suppose, when you're sending stuff out?
Well, for me, I've touched on it already, but I think the tone of voice. I think you've got to be careful. You can get any kind of blog with a huge following, but if they don't marry up in the language that they're using, they're immediately going to stand out when you try to share that content, as doesn't quite look right. It doesn't quite marry up with the brand, and it won't marry up with their audience either. Therefore, any engagement you're hoping to get on the back of it isn't going to happen because you've not married the two up. So I'd say certainly it's the probably primary thing for me is the tone of voice, because that's you're getting them for content.
So if you've got like a really sort of jokey, sarcastic blogger, then most of their content is like that, and then if they're either going to write something sarcastic about your product, which isn't great, or they're going to suddenly be super positive about your product, in which case their audience is going to go promotional post, sounds like nonsense.
I think you have, like, everyone's different. You have different bloggers who will be very, very honest about a product. If they've got a higher following, then they've got more leeway in that they can pick and choose which brands they want to use. So I guess smaller bloggers might be a bit more in your favour. You don't want to use a blogger that's going to slate your product or your company. So just make sure that they're opinionated, but they're not. Review what companies they've worked with in the past and make sure they've not slated anyone that could affect your brand in a bad way.
Cool. I was going to say, and there's nothing wrong with pushing an opinion out there as well. I think there's always time to ruffle a few feathers quite gently, of course, but nothing wrong with getting someone's attention by, having a different opinion to what they've got, or having an opinion that they won't agree with, or see that they've mentioned recently on their timeline something that they are, vehemently agreeing with, and you can come in and agree with it as well. But it's giving that brand recognition that you've got to amplify their stuff. They'll probably appreciate that. So, don't be afraid to be opinionated. It will definitely catch their eye, and it's definitely something to look at. If you're low on time, you haven't got time to write all those messages out, it should organically happen that you've got this blogger anyway, and you can just put an opinion out there and hopefully catch their eye. Yeah,
I guess especially if you've got a product that's a solution to a problem, and people are talking about that problem, you can sort of go out and say, I don't think that's a real problem, or something a bit more kind of aggressive, and then when if they bite, you can then say, well, actually the reason is because we've got this thing or something like that, and you might grab them at that point.
Yeah, change the perspective on something, I guess.
I guess if you can do that, that's a winner, isn't it? Like if you can take someone who is absolutely against this particular thing and you convince them that actually, do you know what, I was dead against this, but I gave this thing a try and I was won over. That's absolute gold, isn't it?
Exactly, definitely.
Okay, so we've got we've made our approach to these bloggers. We've got some good relationships now. Some people have said, yeah, I'm up for talking about your product, and they're up for receiving it. However, we're going to set it out. So what we ask them for, that's a really important thing, is what do we want them to do when they get our product?
Yeah, there's so many different medias that you can use for them to promote your product. So you need to establish whether you want them to post a photo on Instagram in your clothing, whether you want them to make a whole YouTube video about it, whether you want them to write a blog post, even do a story on Instagram. So you've got to make that clear and get your strategy very clear. So say you wanted a video and you've made this clear to the blogger. You've said, in this video I want you to say this, this and this, I want you to cover all these different points. If the blogger then comes back to you and you're not 100% happy with the video, I'd say don't be afraid to go back and say this is great, but we want you to shorten it down, or you've not actually covered this point which was on our agreement originally. Still keep a good relationship with them and be friendly and approachable, as we talked about at first. But you want to reach your goal and you want to actually get engagement from the post. So don't be afraid to be a little bit strict with them, I guess.
I guess especially it's about if you're paying as well. That makes a big difference. If you're paying them to do something, that's one thing. If they're doing it for free, you're a little bit more beholden to what they end up doing. So right at the start, I know I'm going to work with this blogger. I'm writing a brief. Presumably, I'm looking at what the blogger does generally and thinking, right, well, this person's really strong on Instagram, so I want a really good photograph of them using the product or doing something or wearing it or whatever else. Should you be asking for things like retweets of our own stuff, or what other sort of things could you be potentially asking for, Joe?
I think it's good to remember that you've got the blogger in, you are now sort of in control of what that content's going to look like now. So that's important to remember, is that you can dictate this a bit more strongly. You've done the hard work, you've got them in. Now you can dictate sort of how things are going to look. But I think the important thing is also you don't want to give them, or you don't want to manipulate the content too much, so you end up your stuff ends up jarring the timeline. Yeah. So you get them in your clothes, and suddenly they change slightly the way they talk, or the way it's clearly been a photo shoot or something like that. You don't want it to jar too much. I think that's, you
still want that personality.
You want that personality. You've got them for that reason, so you don't want to suddenly shove your brand right in their audience's face. To be honest, you want to keep it quite tidy if you can, because then that's how people start to pick up on it, and that's how it won't look so obvious. As you said, people won't be like, oh, this is a promotional post, and they'll suddenly disappear. I think that's for me pretty important, because I have in the past also, you look at maybe developing a content plan with them as well. That way they don't feel, sometimes you can feel like you're micromanaging them, every post they do, everything like that. You just sort of say, here, let's have say, if they're really strong on Instagram, let's have 3 Instagram posts. Can you have, let them write them and then give it to you, and then you've got the whole week planned out. You know what hashtags they're going to use, you know what the image is going to look like and the tone of it. And then on the back of that, you can also ask them to retweet. You can give them your content plan. You said, we've got these tweets that relate closely to your audience. Can you retweet this on return and make it reciprocal? Because the relationship should always be reciprocal, because you've got them in to promote your stuff. There's also you want to promote other parts of your business as well. And introducing their followers to that as well is pretty important. So I'd always make sure they sort of engage with your stuff as well on the flip side as well.
Yeah, and I also think it's super important when you're negotiating any sort of a deal, and it's not just about, we're talking here about going out and sending products to people and things like that, but think about events. If you've hired imagine you've hired a celebrity to be at an event or something like that, that's the perfect time to start talking about how many times are you going to tweet about that event, how many times are you going to, some of these people have enormous social media followings, and I think there's sometimes a bit of a thought that, I've put this person to the event, so they're bound to talk about it, but they probably won't, because they know that they've monetized every single part of their appearance. So it's really important at the start to say, if you're going to appear, I want you to do, you'll retweet our event saying 3 times, you'll post something about it, you'll post about it on the day, and do all those things and get it written in the contract and have an agreement. And I think that's that's totally acceptable to have that, especially if you're paying somebody to do something. You should never assume that a person's just going to get your product, love it so much, they're just going to non-stop talk about it, because they probably aren't. If they said they're going to do one post, they're going to do one post, and that's probably all they'll do. So it's really important to have that written down.
Yeah, but I think as time goes on as well, the more you work with bloggers, the more you build a relationship with different bloggers, the more you'll get to know who likes your product, who likes your company, who reflects it well. And then if you are putting on an event, you just invite a set amount of bloggers. You don't necessarily have to pay them.
Yeah.
But chances are, if there's a sort of community of bloggers there, they are likely to post about it, even if it's just an Instagram story or like in a YouTube vlog or something like that. So I think as time goes on, the more you work with them, the more free content you get out of them, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's what, like Joe was saying, it's a good idea to plan to work with someone for a longer period of time, because you are more likely to develop that conversation to keep it going. Cool, okay, right, so we've got some good content, we've got that agreed, they posted the content, sales have gone through the roof, or have they, I don't know, how we decide whether we spent a lot of time So yes, we've talked about trying to get stuff without having to spend a lot of money, but you've probably employed somebody like us to go out there and try and get in touch with these people and try and try and get that, or you've used your own internal resource to get in touch with bloggers and people like that. So how are we deciding whether or not this has been a good use of time, a good return?
So I think it's definitely important to measure how successful the posts or blogs have been. So you want to measure how much traffic. Say if it's a blog post, you want to measure how much traffic that post has generated to your website. If it's a post, you want to look at the likes and the shares, who's commenting, how much engagement it got overall. Keep monitoring that, and then if you're working with a wide range of bloggers, evaluate what's working well, what's not doing as good, and don't do that again. So I think measuring it is definitely important.
Yeah, I think you've got to set up the goal that you want the blogger to achieve. Is it to increase your social audience, in which case that's obviously fairly easy to track, but crucially important because that would be most of their audience hopefully jumping over onto your brand as well. And therefore your product tweets or posts, whatever, will therefore reach the wider audience, more people to the website, hopefully ROI, is all good. But if you're trying to track, if you're trying to get them to promote a certain product, then I suppose you have to put something in place that measures, how many of that product they're directly responsible for. You can track their links, you can put little codes on the end of their links, and you can track specifically what links they're promoting and see how many clicks they get and see where those clicks are going on the website, and you can directly correlate that with what they're doing. I think that's certainly quite a good way of doing it. And also, there's no harm in keeping them, in the loop of what they're doing, because I'm sure if you've got someone very good on board, they're going to want to be getting a cut of some of those sales. Perhaps that might be something in the agreement, and they'll probably be open to, look, this isn't doing very well, can you do a bit more? And they might be able to give you a bit extra because they are more personally involved in that product doing really well because they've got their face next to it and they don't want it to drop off, basically. So I think there are several ways you can track it. It just depends on what the goal is that you've set them.
Yeah, and obviously you get your analytics set up, as you said, get those codes in there as events, so you're going to track all those people when they come through. Make sure the links on the blogger sites are follow links, so you still get the benefit of it, and make sure you get those people coming in. And another good thing I think a lot of people miss out on is, with a pretty small amount of budget, you can drop a little bit into remarketing or retargeting and set those ads up in Google, because there's a good chance you're going to suddenly get a massive influx of a load of people who will read a blog, click a link, go onto the site, but a lot of the time those people will not buy something there and then. They'll just wander off and go about their business. Unless you've got a pretty aggressive marketing campaign going where they're going to get hit 6 or 7 more times to eventually make them go and make that purchase, you need to keep hold of those people. And that's, remarketing is you hit that, cookie them when they arrive on the site, and then they get stalked around the internet for forever and a day with whether it's an offer, whether it's some more promotional information about the product. But it's a great way of stopping that person from going away, because we've all done it. You click on a link, you think, well, that sounds fascinating, and then you go off and do something else, and you can't remember what that was. And unless it appears in your Facebook feed again at some point later on or something like that, you might never ever find that again. So I think that's a really good way of kind of capturing those leads and trying to do something more with them when they do come in.
Yeah, and I suppose being aware of making the post timely as well. So if someone's writing a blog for you about a competition, you don't want the whole focus to be on that competition, because if someone reads that a few months later, that's going to be over. So you need to be including things that are relevant all year round, I guess. Yeah,
and I think that's a great thing about this sort of content, is that in theory it lives on. It lives on forever, so it's not like taking an ad out. You get a lot better return. We spend £500 on an ad, or you spend £500 on a blog that's going to write a great, engaging post that's got that transparency and that authenticity. That's going to give you a load better value in the long run than just dropping it on an ad, I think. Okay, cool. So we've measured it. It's been successful. What's next?
I think maintaining a relationship with the blogger. We've already touched a little bit on that, but that's very important. You don't see it as using a blogger and then just dropping them after they've posted for you. You know, keep a relationship, keep commenting on the stuff on social media. A few months down the line, you might want to use them again, or you know, if you build a really good relationship with them, you keep inviting them to events, keep asking them to review different products that you're bringing out. They could become the face of your brand kind of organically as well, which obviously will benefit you a lot. So I think the more bloggers that you maintain the relationship with, the better, definitely.
Yeah, we've had some great success with that, with people who've come on to do some influencers work with us, and they've talked about products and stuff like that, and they've actually liked the stuff so much that they've gone on to post on separate forums about it and things like that. I think that's the thing, is you know, it's give and take. You know, yes, we pay them a bit of money a lot of the time, but then, you know, if you get the right one and the product's right for them, then they'll actually become real evangelists of the product and go off and, you know, and hopefully off their own bat talk about products.
Yeah, like if it's the birthday or something, you know, maybe send them a little gift or send them a happy birthday message. You know, just let them be aware that you're still there and you're still very interested in them as a blogger. And they'll in return be interested in you, hopefully.
That's always the plan. I think there's nothing wrong with giving them little perks as well. If someone's been with you for a number of years, that relationship's clearly working really well, you're clearly very happy with them, they're happy with you, and hopefully everything is going as it should. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, you've been with us for 2 years, you know, thanks so much for your help. You know, if you're in a position to give them a little something extra that makes them feel, it sounds cheesy, but makes them feel a bit special, that's, you know, that's kind of what social media is about. It's kind of making people stand out and feel that they're sort of connecting with people. If they feel they're connected with the brand enough to be given that kind of personal recognition, that's a pretty straightforward way of keeping them on board and keeping all their opinions on the brand pretty positive and everything that you need, really.
Very good. Very good. Any other sort of closing thoughts? Any other things that people should be thinking about when we're talking about working with influencers?
I think maybe if you're scared to initially work with influencers, or you think it might be a little bit of a waste of time, obviously everyone has different budget, like we spoke about, but just start with the smaller influencers. Just start working with people who aren't going to charge you, and then you can see whether it's good for your company, whether it works out well, and then maybe you can evolve and you start using the bigger influencers and paying them a little bit. But I'd say just don't be scared to initially approach people, even if they say no. It's like, that's the worst they can say, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, no, I was going to echo the same thing. I think for me, it's always, if you've never done it before, start small. Start with audiences, you know, 5,000, 10,000 or less. You know, start small. As long as they've got decent engagement, you'll see a return on that, and you'll learn how to communicate and set up, you know, best practice on a small scale, so when you are eventually in a position to go after the bigger accounts, you've got the setup in place, you're ready to hit the ground running, because it's with those accounts that you're going to really see things start moving. And then if you've got everything in place, you get them on board, you discuss what you want in return, you get the content plan or whatever it may be in place, and you know, within, you know, a week or two, you could be, you know, right out the door with that blogger, you know, getting great stats, getting great returns pretty quickly.
Excuse me.
Yeah, like from a consumer point of view, I'm always more inclined to buy into a product if I've seen someone else talk about it that I could kind of trust, who I think is telling the truth. So I think just putting a face behind your logo definitely helps you. You know, you're saying your brand's great, but can you actually prove it? So I think as a consumer, I would definitely be more inclined to buy if someone else was reviewing it and who I trusted and telling me that it's good, worth the money.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Well, thank you both very much for your insights today. I hope you found that useful. Lots to go out there, but I think the main thing is, like anybody can do this. You can just get out and try it with a few, try it with a few smaller people first.
A lot of research involved, but very effective once you get out there.
Yeah, it sounds like that research bit. That's the key. Is do some good research, and then you can get quite a long way with not a huge amount. Well, thank you for joining us today. If you haven't already checked them out, check out our smaller little mini podcasts What the Fox, where you will, when you've met Lizzie today, if you haven't already met her. But there's another one where Lizzie tells us a bit about herself, her life, her history,
You might not want to
and
watch
her
that.
love of McDonald's.
It's just some.
That sounds
just,
like a joke, but it's true.
And then, we have another one as well about Nikki, who's also joined us. So, yes, do check those out. We'll be back again probably next week with another little mini one. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be delving into another, the murky depths of another marketing-based subject. So, until then, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
See you later.